The television show Dallas premiered in 1978, and the story focused around wealthy oil tycoons and their day-to-day family life in Dallas, Texas. Larry Hagman was the evil star who had risen to fame earlier as Anthony Nelson in I Dream of Jeannie. In Dallas, he portrays J.R. Ewing, a man caught up in a ton of family drama and continual shady business deals. The show originally ran with an abbreviated 5-episode pilot season, and its popularity grew considerably during this time. CBS gave the green light to go ahead and continue with the series, and it ran a full 12 seasons, wrapping up in 1991. Now, initially you say, how in the world is this popular during that time? Because people really looked at it as a primetime soap opera. But the story of the wealthy Ewings and the less lucky Barnes family was an audience catcher. The history between these two families and the two patriarchs of the families, Jock Ewing and Digger Barnes, had left terribly bad blood between them. And this left the Barnes family feeling that the Ewings had stolen from them after a former partnership that they had dissolved. Jock's youngest son goes ahead and marries Digger's daughter. This caused the feud to be brought into more sharper focus as the families have to interact continually. It's known that cliffhangers are devices that are deployed across entertainment dramas, but the Dallas Season 3 conclusion stands out as an unbelievably successful one. They blew the top off the way to do a cliffhanger. When it's done poorly, a cliffhanger can really ruin a previously loved television series. But the producers of Dallas were masters at this, and this went off like the fireworks in July. The episode ends with viewers seeing J.R., who's Bobby's oldest brother, and the greedy character that he was, fall to the ground, being shot by some off-screen assailant. And the magic of that moment was that J.R. had enough enemies that virtually anyone in the cast could be a possible suspect. No one in the audience had a clue who was possibly the one that did it, because there were so many people that hated him, it was impossible to narrow it down. There were no hints given in the show, and the show finished the season, leaving the viewers with months to wait for more information about the verdict. This was the golden era of the big three networks when Dallas aired, and there was no way back then to binge watch or catch up on specific moments of a show. The third season finale was an innovative approach. This cliffhanger was the stuff of serialized soaps and of Charles Dickens, not the work of episodic television. On television series, they constantly tried to tidy things up every week and solve every problem. Larry Hagman was not the first choice to play J.R. The part was first offered to Robert Foxworth, but he declined because he felt the character needed to be softened a little bit. Foxworth played a more sympathetic character on the TV show Falcon Crest. Now, Hagman admitted that his alcoholism and boredom with the show and the routine of filming it played a big role in his inclination to drink heavily while he was at work. He would consume as many as 5 bottles of champagne a day. But he also claimed that despite this, he had a high tolerance for drink, and he never missed a day of work or spoiled a shot for being drunk. Now, J.R.'s mother, played by Barbara Bel Geddes, she was actually only 9 years older than Larry Hagman in real life, and it's kind of odd that they played mother and son. Hagman was really 18 years older than Patrick Duffy, who played his younger brother. Though in the show, we really assume that they're only a few years apart in age. Now, in 1984, Barbara Bel Geddes left the show because the producers wouldn't agree to a pay raise for her. They ended up bringing in Donna Reed to take her place the following season. When Bel Geddes decided to return in 1985, they ended up firing Reed. Reed went on to sue the producers for breach of contract, and they ended up settling with her for an undisclosed amount of money. The ironic thing about this is that Donna Reed died of cancer in January of 1986, just a few months after she left the show, which meant that she wouldn't be able to continue the show for the duration of her contract anyway. Now, when David Jacobs offered Barbara Bel Geddes the job of Miss Ellie, she accepted it immediately because she was just completely flat broke after her husband's death 6 years earlier. At the time, she was living in New York City, and throughout the series, she flew back home to New York every weekend and on breaks from the show to spend time with her family. There were 2 sets that were used for the ranch exteriors. A real ranch, which is South Fork Ranch in Parker, Texas, and the ranch set that was built on the soundstage. Filming would move from the real ranch to the studio setting in the second half of each season. There were some noticeable differences in the studio-based set, and you could really tell the difference between the two. I have a special connection to this set in the fact that I've always been in the landscape business for many years, and at the time that this show was popular, I worked for one of the largest landscape companies in Texas, and we handled a lot of the products that were used on the set at the ranch in Parker. Once they were done with filming, these items had to be boxed up and sent to LA for reuse in the shootings on the soundstage. The ranch in Parker was actually a working ranch owned by a family named Duncan. Now let's go back to the cliffhanger for just a second. This cliffhanger paid off in a huge way. Everybody was talking about it and speculating on who had done it and who the culprit was. It's said that Larry Hagman was even asked who the identity of the assailant was by Queen Elizabeth, but he kept her in the dark too. The show's writers worked extremely hard to keep the secret under wraps. They went so far as to let all the characters of the show, even some of the crew members, shoot J.R. on camera so that no one really knew who actually did the act until the very next season's reveal. And those that were involved in the editing process and had the ability to be aware of what was going to unfold had to sign contracts saying that they wouldn't disclose any information and it would be kept secret until the showing of that episode. The term "Who Shot J.R." became a real marketing catchphrase, and this was the biggest thing on television for years and years. Eventually, Kristen Shepard, J.R.'s wife's sister, and his former lover, was revealed to be the culprit behind the gun. But by then, the story was really less about who had done this dastardly deed and more about the way the production company successfully used a cliffhanger to boost its own show's success. It's said that the days that they shot the sequences of J.R. getting shot and showing the person that did it, it was really a fun time on the set during this shoot. And the cast and crew had a blast doing it. Everybody got to take their chance at J.R. And it's kind of funny that Larry Hagman was really a jokester. And during this time, he changed into a novelty shop vest and toasted the company with a glass of scotch. As he drank it, liquid spouted out from numerous bullet holes in his chest. The cast just loved it. There was never a dull moment when Larry Hagman was around. Now, the mystery that the producers unleashed on viewers that March ran rampant much longer than originally intended. You see, they had an actors' strike that shut down all TV production and pushed the start of the network's fall 1980 season into November. This ended up imposing an extra 3 months for the nation's favorite guessing game to rage on. Everyone except Larry Hagman came back at the beginning of the show's 4th season. Because Hagman was involved in contract negotiations, he was holding out for a higher salary. The producers were faced with the dilemma whether to pay the greatly increased salary or to write J.R. out of the show. But one thing for sure, the show would not be the same without Larry Hagman playing J.R. I can distinctly remember the anticipation of each week's episodes of this show. The drama that developed each week made you feel like you knew this crazy, dysfunctional family. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.